Happy hello to you, friends. I hope you are doing well. Today we are talking about character design. Woo! In this video, I will graze over 3 characters that I'm building for my work in progress story, The Adventures of Moss. The main character is Moss. He's a 6-year-old human who was abandoned in the forest as a baby, and he was found by the Harefolk, a small village of people that live deep in the forest. They're basically anthropomorphic hares. Moss was adopted by June, an acorn forest. The main story is actually about Moss growing as a character when he accidentally falls into the river and gets washed away from home. And he goes on this whole adventure where he ends up in the human society and he has this whole identity questioning thing going on. But I want to turn that story, The Adventures of Moss, into a graphic novel. What I'm doing first is a webcomic called The Life of Moss, which is about Moss living with the Harefolk in the Warren, which is the name of their village. So, basically that's the roundabout way of me saying that the characters I'm designing today are 3 of Moss's classmates at his Harefolk school. I've actually already designed what each of the characters in Moss's class looks like. I did that in a previous video. I'll link it up in the corner for you. But that was more of a getting the idea and concept of each character onto paper sort of video. Today I'll be zoning in on 3 of the students and we'll actually talk about their characters. Now, 2 quick disclaimers. 1, I am still learning about how to do character design well. This is by no means a tutorial. Of course, feel free to take notes or whatever and use this video to learn, but yeah, not a tutorial. And 2, everything I talk about here is subject to change. This story and what I'm working on are still in their early stages, so just don't judge too hard, okay? Thanks. Okay, let's get started then, shall we? The 3 students I'll be working on today are Rowan Woods, Fern Woods, and Henry Field. Rowan and Fern are siblings. They are 1 year apart, but the way that I've designed the Warren school system isn't like school in regular life. See, there isn't enough kids or teachers in the village to have individual years, like having all the 5-year-olds together and then all the 12-year-olds together. It doesn't really work. So I've designed a system that works for now. It may change in the future, but this is what we're going with. Harefolk children begin school at 5 years old. There are 3 levels of school: under 7s, 8s to 10s, and 11-ups. Children finish school at 17, but they can be pulled out of school to work at 16 if they so desire. And if they can sort of like prove that they're like ready to leave school. There are 2 teachers in the village. The first is June Forest, and if you've been paying attention, you'll recognise that this is Moss's adoptive mother. She teaches under 7s and the 8 to 10s. The second teacher, Mrs. Bloom, teaches the 11-ups. And there's actually only 1 schoolhouse, so the younger classes have 2 days of school, and the older class has 3 days of school. It's not the best or most convenient school system, but it will work for now. Feel free to suggest any changes or ideas in the comments down below though. So before I got sidetracked and started explaining the school system, I was going to say that Rowan and Fern are in the same class despite being a year apart. Rowan is 7, and then Fern and Henry are 6. They could be called Moss's friends. They become closer throughout the webcomic, but up to the point where I've written so far, they're more of acquaintances. But Rowan, Fern, and Henry together are kind of like a friendship trio. Let's start with Rowan. Rowan is shy, quite anxious, and quiet, and he was Cliff's primary target until Moss showed up. Cliff is the bully of the class, by the way. Rowan hates the idea of being helped and never asks for any, even when Cliff is harassing him. But his little sister Fern saw right through him and began defending him ruthlessly. Rowan is very curious mind, and he loves learning new things, but despite this, he doesn't like going to school very much. Partially because of Cliff, but also because he finds the environment very anxiety-inducing, despite June Forest's attempts to make her classroom friendly and welcoming. Which it is. It's just sort of Rowan who struggles. He would often come up with excuses to skip school or leave class early, such as feeling sick or faking an injury. Next is Fern. Fern is a strong, self-assured little lady. She speaks her mind, which sometimes comes off as judgmental or rude, and she's always ready to defend herself and her brother, though he says he doesn't need her to. But she ignores him and defends him aggressively whenever she feels it's needed, which is regularly. She isn't afraid to get physical, but Rowan tends to talk her out of it before she gets herself into trouble. She loves her brother, but has trouble showing it. A punch on the arm is the closest Rowan can ever get to a hug. She is disciplined and does well in school. She tries to help Rowan in school, but she doesn't really know how to teach, partially because of the fact that she's only 6 years old, but also because she isn't very patient or typically compassionate. And finally, Henry. This young hare is an energetic, bouncing off the walls type of kid. He's loud and always talking. Mrs. Forest often has to tell him to be quiet in class. But he's actually secretly self-conscious about how loud and energetic he is, and he tries really hard to control himself and act cool like Rowan and Fern. He finds learning difficult and always seems to be a few steps behind everyone else in class. Recess and lunchtime are his favourite times of the school day. He cares a lot about his friends and can be a very kind, compassionate kid. And despite being so loud and out there, things like confrontation scare him. And in the past, when he's tried to defend Rowan from Cliff, he found himself very sweaty and shaky. He isn't exactly a kid who's scared of things. He loves trying new things, and he doesn't really have a good sense of danger, unless it's about people he knows. He respects authority a bit too much, so he struggles to stand up for himself and his friends. So now that you know who they are individually, I suppose I should explain how they actually interact with each other. Fern is kind of the protector of the group, and kind of like the big sister of the three of them, despite actually being the youngest. Henry always goes to her for help, and she usually rolls her eyes, but helps anyway. She does care about him and considers him a good friend, despite her rocky exterior. How many times have I said despite in this video so far? Rowan gets on well with Henry. It's kind of opposites attract in this sort of situation. Henry makes Rowan laugh and smile, and Rowan appreciates Henry for that. Henry sort of idolizes Rowan. He thinks he's this cool, older kid, and he wants to be his friend because he wants to be like him. Henry does notice when Rowan isn't feeling great and is always there to try and cheer him up. Henry does sort of promote this toxic positivity thing though, thinking that everyone should always be happy all of the time. He's still young and he doesn't realize that that isn't healthy and it's okay for people to be upset. Maybe I could have a comic where Henry learns this. I feel like that could be interesting. And that is everything. I think Rowan needs the most amount of work, but I feel like I could work more on all of them. The thing with working with such young characters is that they're all growing and developing literally as I write every single word. Kids this age are constantly taking in everything they see and hear, which molds and shapes them every single day. So it's hard to define them as a sort of set character like an adult would be, because they are always changing, all of the time. But I kind of like that. Maybe I see it as a challenge, I don't know. But yeah, that's Rowan, Fern, and Henry. We're almost at the end of the video now, so I suppose that it's the point where I ask you guys to like the video if you enjoyed. Check out my other videos on the world I'm working on if you're interested. I did one talking about the world map and all of the civilizations. I did one where I talk about my magic system. And also subscribe to the channel if you like my content and want to see more. That would really help me out. And that is everything for now. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. And I will see you all next time. Bye!